At Sidi Ferruch Beach in Algeria, during Operation Torch on November 8, 1942, the first American infantrymen came ashore carrying a weapon almost none had ever seen. Packed in crates stamped "Secret" were 5,000 brand-new M1 rocket launchers, soon to earn their enduring nickname, the Bazooka. To most soldiers, those crates held little more than mysterious lengths of steel. No one had given them instructions or training. Few knew that this rough-looking device would soon change the rules of armored combat. In under 2 years, the bazooka would force the Germans to rethink their tank tactics, trigger frantic attempts to copy the idea, and turn the average American foot soldier from easy tank prey into a capable tank hunter. But the bazooka's tale starts months earlier at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, on May 6, 1942. Colonel Leslie Skinner and Lieutenant Edward Ewell had been asked to present promising anti-tank solutions to a skeptical panel of generals. While the British were laboring on heavy spigot mortars, bulky 100-pound beasts needing trained crews, Ewell offered something far more modest. That morning he cobbled a prototype together from scrap. He found a steel tube in a junk pile that happened to be the right diameter, bent a wire coat hanger into crude sights, taped parts together, and made a launcher out of what others would call junk. The generals hardly noticed it at first. Their attention was fixed on the complicated mortars they'd been banking on. When testing began, 5 spigot mortars fired at a moving M3 Stuart from 150 yards and missed. The devices proved too heavy, too awkward, too complex. Then Ewell stepped up with his homemade tube. Worried the backblast might be dangerous, he donned a welder's mask, shouldered the launcher, aimed through the coat hanger sights, and squeezed the trigger. The rocket hissed out and struck the tank side dead on. He reloaded in 5 seconds and scored again. General Barnes, Chief of Research and Engineering, eyed the odd device and laughed. It reminded him of Bob Burns's musical Bazooka. The nickname stuck. More importantly, Barnes immediately ordered 5,000 into production. What followed became one of the fastest prototype to mass production jumps in U.S. military history. By October 1942, General Electric and other firms were cranking out some 5,000 launchers a month. Each launcher required only about 20 pounds of steel, basic welding, and simple electrical parts. The price? Roughly $25 for the tube and $8 per rocket. A seamless steel tube 54 inches long, weighing about 13 pounds, it could penetrate up to 4 inches of armor at 300 yards. Captain Franklin Johnson at Fort Benning later noted that a soldier could be trained to use a bazooka effectively in a single afternoon, a startling contrast to the weeks required to master the 37mm anti-tank gun. 2 infantrymen could carry a bazooka anywhere their squad went. Suddenly, they possessed something they'd never had before: real confidence against enemy tanks. But the North African landings nearly turned into disaster. Eisenhower discovered on the eve of the invasion that the men had never even opened the new weapons. The bazookas had been shipped in sealed crates marked "Secret," and rules forbade opening them until combat began. As a result, troops were forced to figure the weapons out in the thick of battle, under fire, without manuals, without training. To make matters worse, many rockets suffered saltwater damage during the voyage. The 509th Parachute Infantry later reported that only 7 of their first 20 rockets actually functioned. Even amid that chaotic debut, there were bright moments. On November 10th, the 1st Armored Division notched its initial kills. 2 French Renaults knocked out near Port Lyautey. The weapon worked. When it did, the Germans would soon get a first-hand look. In February 1943, during the fighting at Kasserine Pass, elements of Rommel's Afrika Korps overran American positions and captured intact launchers and rockets. Within days, those captured weapons were shipped back to Germany. German engineers quickly appreciated the genius of its simplicity. Their March 1943 technical reports praised the low weight, minimal production requirements, and notable armor penetration. They set about building their own variants, upscaling the warhead to 88 millimeters. By September, the Germans had fielded fearsome copies. The Regenwerfer and Panzerschreck entered production. The bazooka's first serious test against German armor came during Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. By then, American troops were using the improved M1A1 and better rockets. At Biscari, paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne pulled off an almost legendary shot, striking a Tiger tank dead center through the driver's vision slit, exploiting one of its rare vulnerabilities. The bazooka had arrived, crude, small, and revolutionary, and the battlefield would never be quite the same. German war diaries eventually conceded a troubling truth. Enemy infantry now carried rocket weapons capable of obliterating armor from 100 to 150 meters away. Colonel James Gavin of the 505th Parachute Infantry wrote that the bazooka gave his men something priceless: confidence. In Sicily alone, 17 German tanks fell victim to its firepower. But perhaps even more significant, the old tank panic that paralyzing fear soldiers once felt at the sight of oncoming armor began to vanish. As the war pushed into Italy, the bazooka's role evolved. It became more than just an anti-tank weapon. It turned into a universal battlefield tool. Soldiers discovered it could crack open bunkers, collapse fortifications, and tear through buildings just as easily as it shredded armor. In Ortona, Canadian troops famously blasted holes through thick stone walls to move between buildings, avoiding the deadly sniper-filled streets outside. By early 1944, every U.S. infantry battalion carried at least 24 launchers. German commanders were quick to adapt. Orders went out. Tanks were forbidden to move into towns without infantry support, and they were to steer clear of buildings within 100 meters unless those areas were confirmed safe. Tank crews, desperate for protection, began welding spare track links, sandbags, and even slabs of concrete onto their hulls. Then came D-Day. Thousands of bazooka teams crossed the beaches of Normandy, their tubes slung over their shoulders. In the dense hedgerows of France, these weapons became indispensable. American records credit the bazooka with destroying 12% of all German tanks lost in the U.S. sector during the 6 weeks after June 6. Portable, cheap, and lethal, the bazooka had become as essential as the rifle or the machine gun. During the brutal winter of the Battle of the Bulge, the weapon faced its harshest trial. Batteries froze. Propellants failed. Yet even under those punishing conditions, bazookas destroyed or disabled nearly 90 German armored vehicles. Soldiers learned to tuck rockets beneath their coats to keep them warm, waiting for just the right moment to fire. One sergeant famously hit a Panther tank square in the engine deck from 75 yards, forcing the crew to abandon it in the snow. Its versatility knew no limits. Even pilots joined in. Major Charles Carpenter, flying a tiny L-4 Grasshopper observation plane, mounted 6 bazookas under his wings. Over the course of 1944, he destroyed tanks, trucks, and armored cars, earning the nickname Bazooka Charlie. His improvised flying tank killer became the stuff of legend among Allied troops. By the war's end, America had built nearly 500,000 bazookas and over 15 million rockets. The economics were staggering. For the cost of a single Sherman tank, the Army could buy thousands of launchers and tens of thousands of rockets. A German tank worth tens of thousands of Reichsmarks could be wrecked by an $8 rocket fired by a 19-year-old infantryman. Post-war studies confirmed its impact. About 12% of all German tanks destroyed in the European theater fell to bazookas. But the psychological effect was even greater. German diaries revealed that many tank crews abandoned their vehicles not after being hit, but simply when they heard rumors that bazooka teams were nearby. The unstoppable blitzkrieg, that lightning-fast armored warfare that once terrorized Europe in 1940, had been slowed to a crawl by little steel tubes wielded by common soldiers. And the bazooka's influence didn't end there. In the Pacific, U.S. Marines used white phosphorus rockets to burn out Japanese bunkers and caves. At Iwo Jima alone, nearly 2,000 rockets were fired. In Korea, the original M1 struggled against Soviet-built T-34s, but the newer 3.5-inch Super Bazooka restored the balance, giving American infantry their confidence back. From there, the design philosophy spread across the globe, inspiring the Soviet RPGs, the British Law, and the Swedish Carl Gustaf, all direct descendants of that humble American weapon. The bazooka was more than a piece of equipment. It was a symbol, a a triumph of simplicity, ingenuity, and trust in the ordinary soldier. Born from scrap metal and a coat hanger, it could be built in hours, learned in minutes, and carried anywhere. It represented America's industrial democracy, mass-produced power placed directly in the hands of its citizens. German engineers once prided themselves on mechanical perfection. Their tanks, like the mighty Tiger, were masterpieces of engineering, rolling fortresses built to dominate any battlefield. But perfection wasn't enough. Because across the lines, American soldiers carried something far simpler, a tube of steel and courage. The bazooka. Where Germany built hundreds of mechanical marvels, the Allies produced thousands of these humble rocket launchers. And that changed everything. By the war's end, even German armored commanders had to admit a bitter truth. The American bazooka had stripped their tanks of independence. Armor could no longer roam the battlefield freely. Every hedgerow, every window, every pile of rubble could hide a bazooka team waiting to strike. The unstoppable blitzkrieg was finally stopped. Not by other tanks, not by massive artillery, but by the hands of ordinary men, carrying a simple weapon that first appeared on the beaches of North Africa. November 8, 1942. That humble, rugged, devastating weapon helped bring down the Third Reich, one rocket at a time. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible war history, and share this video with someone who loves learning how simple ideas changed the course of history.